How is everyone doing? Welcome to, what is this? This is number 8 of this little live stream experiment that we're doing, this call-in community, if you will. And before we get into it too far, today is, I think today, it was either today or yesterday, is the last day in a lot of places. It's the cutoff to make sure that your mail-in ballot gets to where it needs to go on time. So if you have not mailed in your ballot, please vote in person if you can. This is, I'm not going to get political, but this is certainly the most important election in my lifetime. And it's important that your voice be heard. So please go vote. I was talking to my friend Freddy the other day, and we were talking, I was telling him about some of the thoughts I was having around the show, what I kind of wanted it to be and hoped that it could be, and how I was finding it more difficult than I thought it would be, especially just to riff over dead air, and how without some sort of theme or direction or someone to talk to, because I'm better in conversation, I think, than I am by myself, that I was finding it difficult, and I was sort of losing my place and ending up feeling like I just rambled for an hour. Now, just to provide a little context, before Freddy became, frankly, an outstanding beverage photographer, I'll put a link to his site in the show notes. He was a DJ on a New Jersey radio station called 95.9 The Rat. And he gave me some great advice. He said, there are 2 things that I had to do. And number 1, always have at least 2 things to go to. And that can be a song or an ad. Well, I mean, we don't do ads, so a song or some bit of pre-recorded something. I'd love to be able to cut in, answers to questions that people have called in with, or responses to other shows, to be able to cut in little bits of other conversations. So I could have those things to go to. And he said, in doing that, you minimize the opportunity for dead air, and you give yourself a chance to regroup if you feel like it's kind of getting away from you, or you're getting a little lost, right? The other thing he told me was not to worry about the audience, at least not the size of the audience. He said that one of the things that he would do is just pick one person, and that person can be real, they can be imaginary, doesn't really matter, but just talk to them and tell them stories, ask them questions, try to connect, encourage them, to reach out if they have questions or comments, or they just want to call in and say hi. Focus on that one person and just don't worry about everyone else. And I thought that was terrific advice. So moving forward, I think that's what I'm going to try and do. And I think Freddy might even call in a little bit later. I'm going to try and get him on the line and see if we can talk a little bit more about something, some of this stuff. And he's got great stories, so he's a good storyteller. If you listened to the first of these shows, you know that radio is the inspiration behind this whole thing. It's why I wanted to do it. And if you missed that episode, feel free to go back and listen to the replay. But the short version is I loved listening to late night radio in junior high and high school. And shows like Dr. Demento and Jim Ladd's headsets. And although it wasn't late night, shows on KLOS that I listened to, and Joe Frank on KCRW. There was a lot of great radio in LA, as you can imagine. And I wanted to do something that honored those DJs that I listened to, who played great music and told interesting stories and had great conversations. Their interests, really, and tastes helped to shape my own. So this is kind of a love letter. This is kind of a thank you in part to those people that I listen to. But one of the things that I've learned over the past 7 weeks of doing this is, because I'm putting it out as a live call-in show, I'm encouraging people to call in. I want to hit as many people as I can. And a good chunk of my podcast audience is in the UK. In fact, the UK is number 2 behind the US. So I wanted to try and pick a time that would work here and there. But what I found is that in trying to pick a time that would be good for everyone, right? Thinking that 5 p.m., it's not too late for the UK. It's not, it's okay here on the East Coast, but it's kind of early in the middle of the day for the West Coast. In trying to pick a time that's good for everyone, I ended up picking one that's just not really that good for anyone. It's kind of inconvenient for everybody involved. So I think this is where I take my own advice, and Freddy's for that matter, and do the show that I want to do at the time that I want to do it, and not really worry about, worry is the wrong word, but not really concern myself with the audience in terms of the whole, beyond that one person, right, that Freddy said to talk to. And if you can't listen to it live for whatever reason, or you just don't want to listen to it live, maybe because it's 4 a.m. in the UK right now, or 3 a.m, whatever it is, you can listen to the replay on YouTube, or they will also be in my everything feed, which I've been really lax about doing. I forgot about it for a couple of weeks, and now it's been like 6 weeks. So I don't know if I should just dump all 6 of them in at once, or do 2 a day for the next 3 days. I don't know. I'll figure it out. Anyway, and then there's the newsletter, which is probably going to be a monthly, and it will be sort of a bridge between us and past and future episodes. And what I'd love to do, and I don't know if this is possible, it might be, I haven't done any research into this, but what I would love to do is set up some way. Skype has changed their voicemail, so that's not out. That's out. But I'd like to set up a way that maybe you can record a message or leave me a little message somehow, kind of like Tom in Michigan used to do for OTP, and cut those things into the live shows as I get them, right? Because I think what we're doing here, it's going to start small. It's going to, I hope build, but I think together we can figure it out and grow this into a pretty cool community. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. Do you have something to say? Do you have some ideas? Do you have some feedback? Call me 202-539-0209 or Skype me at Saddoris. I'm going to try and get Freddy, but in the meantime, this is the Slowdown.
Well, I don't mind the slow down anymore. I don't mind the sound of my shoes on your floor. I don't mind selling out or playing cover song, just as long as friends and family sing along. And I don't need more money or a faster car, no. Don't need a magazine to call me a superstar, no. I'm gonna take this little house and make a home. and I'll never have to face my nights alone. 'Cause in my heart I hear you speak, and on my face I feel you breathe next to me. Two by land, by air, by sea, and that is how it's supposed to be. Now, and that much I can say now. I'm pulling loaves of bread down from the shelf, and how rare it is that I stay up past 12. In the backyard we are going to start a garden. If that don't sound mighty good, I beg your pardon. 'Cause in my heart I hear you speak, and on my face I feel you breathe next to me. Two by land, by air, by sea, and that is how it's supposed to be. Now, and that much I can say now. If they don't love us, we don't need them. Let's find our own brand of freedom. If they don't love us, we don't need them. Well, let's find our own brand of freedom. I don't mind the slowdown anymore.
Yep.
I don't mind the sound of my shoes on your floor anymore.
Michael Shynes with the Slowdown. And just as a reminder, all of the music that you're hearing on the show is from artlist.io, and I couldn't be happier with them. Their selection is really terrific. And it's, like I said, I couldn't be happier with them. You can, if you're a filmmaker or a podcast creator, YouTuber, check them out. There's a link in the show notes. If you follow that link, you'll get 2 months free when you sign up for one of their subscriptions. And as hinted at on the phone, Freddy Clark,
Hey, can you play Stairway to Heaven?
I could, but you and I would have to go in on the royalties to pay for it.
Am I even allowed to say Stairway to Heaven? I
think you can say it. I don't. That's like that. That's about all we can do, right? Is just say it.
Right. I couldn't hum a few bars. Okay.
Right. No, please don't. I can't afford that.
Okay. No, I won't. Don't worry about it. And even if I did, nobody'd be able to tell what it was anyway. I'm not bad at it. I'm not bad at singing. So.
Yeah, I think you and I carry the same tune.
Yeah.
So
hey, what's happening?
Did I get the intro right? That's what we talked about, isn't it? That was your advice.
What? I'm sorry. What was my advice?
To just pick one person, real or imaginary, to talk to, and always have at least two things to go to.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, because you want to make sure that you're being personable, and if you try to talk to a large group of people, you're not going to be personable. Right. So you want to make sure that, that you pick a person that could be real, or imagined. And then always have two things just in case, because something's going to screw up. You're going to botch something up, or mechanically something's going to fail, or the volume's going to be turned down on something. So just always have your safety nets ready to go.
Well, I'm absolutely going to botch something. I think I've botched something pretty well every week so far.
Well, don't worry about it. You will. You will. And then, it's going to happen. It will happen. Dude, I haven't worked in radio in 20 years, right? Has it been 20? Yeah, probably 20 years. And I still have dreams that I'm on the mic behind the console and I have nothing queued up. I have no, I don't have a record ready to go or a CD ready to go, or I'm just babbling incoherently as I'm trying to grab something. And of course, those dreams, you drop it. It's like the underwear dream, right? You're stuck in your underwear someplace out in public.
Right.
Same type of dream, but I still have that radio dream.
When you were there, did you work through that transition from LPs to CDs, or were LPs already gone?
By the time I was working professionally, LPs were gone. When I was in college, it was that's when college that I was in college for that. So we still had in the college radio station, we still had a wall of records out in you had because we had the booth, and then you can't even call it a lobby, but I guess it was a lobby, and there was the production room off of that, but then there was a huge wall of vinyl. And for a college radio station, I mean, it had a ton of vinyl, and that was just when it was switching over. But by the time I started working, even at some of the smaller stations, it was CDs.
Wow.
And now it's really not even CDs anymore. You're basically, it's all computer. I mean, even if it's a live show, the music is all computerized and everything is just totally digital, and you're just picking and choosing and slotting it into a queue and hitting play on the computer, basically.
I mean, I get that it's more efficient. It's got to be more efficient, right? But there's still something. There's got to be something about. I mean, I've never had the experience, so I'm only assuming, and you can confirm or deny this. But there's got to be something pretty cool about kind of fingering through the spines of the records, pulling one out, putting it on the turntable, and dropping a needle. There's got to be something just really cool about that if you're of our kind of age group that grew up with vinyl.
Yes, but when you're all that is beforehand, right? It's when your other song is playing, you're queuing up your next song, and you can get a little beat mix type of thing going on, but it was a point of failure,
right?
So if you are, especially if you're playing a song, and if it's in a heavy rotation, right, you could burn through that record, and the reality of it is, you could be as the jock, you could be in the bathroom, and then all of a sudden the record's skipping. I mean, that has happened,
Right.
Luckily I was in college, and when I was using LPs, but it is not the romance of it gets outweighed by just the ability to know, okay, it's right here.
Right.
It's ready to go, and it's a chance. And CDs will skip too. I mean, I had CDs skip on me sometimes. But you want it to be as fail safe as possible.
Right.
Right. Because you don't want to. Mistakes are fun once in a while, but if there's too many of them, you're gonna get the boot. So you don't want to.
Well, thankfully I'm friends with the owner of this one, so I think I've got a little bit of leeway.
Right. And if I was going to get fired, I wanted it to be for something I said,
right.
Not for something that, not for something that I had no control of.
Right. Which I imagine happened a fair bit.
A little bit. Yeah. A little bit.
All right. So can you give me maybe a PG-13 radio story? Actually, you know what? We're all adults here. You can go R if you want.
Well, all right. So I'll give you one where I got a few. Okay. So the first one, kind of going back to what saying what I was going to say get me in trouble. Now, I was never a big fan of Bon Jovi, the band. And
wait, you're from New Jersey? Don't they take away your residency for that?
I'm from New York. I live in New Jersey right now.
Okay,
I was born
all right.
and bred
So
in New York.
they give you a pass.
Right. And I was not a big fan of the whole hair metal thing.
Right.
I liked 70s, and I liked the what would now be the classic rock guys, Zeppelin, Queen, Rush, those, and then the 80s hair metal thing I never got into. And I don't even remember what the context was, but we might have been doing a promotion with them because they weren't huge yet. Yes, we were playing softball against them. That's right. That's what
you're playing softball against Bon Jovi.
Yeah, we were doing a charity softball game against Bon Jovi and another band, and I can't remember now. I'm drawing a blank on who the other
band was. And this
is
pre-Slippery When Wet.
Yes.
Okay.
And John didn't show up. Tito showed up. Oh, great, So
it's like Ringo showed up.
Right, exactly, yeah. So then literally it was like an afternoon game, and then I was on the air that night because I did nights. So, we had been pumping this thing, and, when you get you're there and people come and see it, the listeners come and see it, and you could see that there was, they were obviously let down.
Right.
Because they wanted to see, look, it's a rock band. Who do you want to see? The lead singer and the guitar player.
Right.
After that, it kind of falls off the map real quick.
Right.
So I get on the air that night, and I'm talking about it. And I was aggravated too. That
was there any phone call? Was there any heads up that John wasn't going to show?
Last minute, very last minute.
Okay.
It was very
after he was
minute.
already supposed to be there.
The limo, the car pulled up, and where is he? Oh, he's not here. Yeah. So on the air, I called him. On the air, I called him John Bon Blow Me.
Yikes.
And I heard from the general manager the next day about that one.
Did you ever hear from him? Did he ever reach out?
No. I didn't hear. I got a complaint on air by somebody who claimed to be involved with the band, but I didn't buy that. And then the next day, the general manager, kind of called me in his office and said, you got to lay up, don't do that, So that one, I got a little bit of heat for that one. And then the other thing I got a little bit of heat for was we had Arbitron books back then. And, that was our ratings, right? And that's, that meant a lot. I mean, we were a young radio station. We just really started, and it was like our first big book. And I'm sitting there the day of the book, and, everybody comes, I'm with the program director in the afternoon, we're with the GM, and we did really well. And then another local radio station.
So wait, hold on. Before you go, can I interrupt real quick?
Yeah.
So Arbitron is like Nielsen for radio. Is that a fair comparison? Okay.
That's pretty much exactly what it is.
Okay.
And they break it up. And they break it up into you have demographic units, so 15 to 20. I know I'm going to massacre them, but there's different buckets, right? 18 to 35, and then 35 to 45, whatever they are. And we had come in basically number one in young adults, right? Which was what we wanted, right? We were a rock station, right? So you wanted those young adults. So all of a sudden, we get wind that the competitor, which was kind of the nearest station to us geographically, which was like a top 40 station, they're like, we're number one in men's. They would make sweepers, like little on-air announcements. Whatever the station was, blah 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 blah. BSF, whatever. And number one, with males 18 to 25 in New Jersey. And it was like, no, you're not, right? We knew you. I'm looking at the book. So I called their jock. I had wound up, I found the, in a radio station, you'll have two numbers, your request line, which you give out.
Right.
And then there'll be the hotline number that the program director will have, the other jocks will have, that you have to pick up, right? You don't always have to pick up your request line. A lot of times you just let that ring, depending on what's happening. But the hotline, that's got to ring.
That's the bat phone. You got to pick that one up.
That's the bat phone.
Yeah.
Right?
All right.
So we had a sales guy who had used to work at that other radio station, and I don't know how, and I don't know why he did this, but I talked him into giving me the number for the hotline of the other radio station, for the jock hotline. So I run tape. I record this, and I call the other jock, and I'm like, you can't play that sweeper anymore. He's like, what are you talking about? I'm like, this is Freddy from the Rat. You can't play that anymore. He's like, who is this? I'm like, it's Freddy Clark from the Rat across town. You can't play that. You're lying to your audience that you're number one. You're not number one, 18 to 25 males. We are. So stop, cut it out, stop the crap, and stop, take that off.
Right.
And he's like, what are you, and he's like, flabbergasted. I'm like, he's like,
first of all, how did you get this number?
Right. How'd you get this number? Are we on the air right now? No, we're not on the air.
Is it a bit? Yeah.
But I'm taping it. I'm going to definitely play it. So that one I got in trouble for too. But it was always like I afterwards, like talking to the PD years later, because I'm still friends with him. I would always be like, what did I have to do to get fired?
Right.
And he's like, I don't know, but he goes, I don't know, but you got away with it.
You got close.
I got close, I think. That time more because I don't know which is worse. I don't know which was worse, which I got more in trouble for. About the same for both of those. But it was, I was 20. What was I? 25 years old. Radio was what I wanted to do, and I was having fun with it.
Right.
So.
And now you're one of New Jersey's premier beverage photographers.
Hopefully more than New Jersey, but yeah, hopefully.
I'm sorry. Credit where credit. One of the East Coast. Are we just going to go national? One of the country's best.
I'll take that. Well, I don't know yet. Give me a little while yet, but yeah. So, but no, I mean, radio was a ton of fun. I had a lot of fun with it. And I was blessed to be where I was.
Right.
Especially for a lot of things just fell into place. It was one of those things where I spent a ton of time. I almost used a bad word there. I used a ton of time. Yeah, exactly. I'm out of practice. I spent a ton of time in college sending out tapes,
right,
and resumes and air check tapes, and I never got any of those gigs. And the gigs I wound up getting, I kind of fell into.
Yeah.
It was actually pretty funny when I think about it now that none of the jobs I quote unquote applied for did I wind up getting, but I wound up falling into the two jobs I had.
Wow.
My two big radio jobs.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Very cool.
So it was, it was interesting. It was an interesting trip.
Yeah.
So.
Love it. Well, I am going to get to the main gig of this show, if you don't mind. But thank you for calling in. I appreciate it. You want to talk
no problem,
next week after the election?
Maybe, I don't know.
We'll see where we're both at. Next week's show may be preempted by severe depression,
right? Or civil unrest, or yeah, no, I don't. Yeah, maybe we'll see.
All right,
we'll see.
All right,
but all right, man.
Thank you. Thanks for calling in. I appreciate it.
No, you're welcome.
All right, I'll talk to you soon. All right,
night. See you. Night. Bye.
Freddy Clark. I will put a link to Freddy's work in the show notes. He really is terrific, and I'll tell you his story. I'll have him come on and tell you his story because he's watching his work get better and better over the last several years has been a real treat. He's putting in the time and doing the work, and it really does show. So let's jump into. I've got somebody else that's going to call in, but I want to kind of set this up for a minute. So, Richard, if you can just hang tight for just a sec. This came out of one of the questions I get asked a lot, and it might even be the question I get asked the most, is how do I make a living from my art? And, sometimes the phrasing's a little different. Sometimes it's, how do I become a professional X? And most of the time it's specific to photography or sometimes painting, because those are the communities that I seem to be associated with, especially photography because of OTP. Although, questions about podcasting come up as well. But regardless of the language, the meaning is the same, right? It's basically, how do I quit my day job and only do the thing that I love because that's what I really want to do, right? And despite knowing a few people who do that, who are able to do that, the short answer to the question is I really have no idea. The number of people making their living exclusively from doing the thing that they love is not as big as you might think. For example, I know several people who actually do make a living from photography, but that doesn't mean just taking photos. They're also selling books or selling prints or hosting workshops or, producing some sort of course or selling presets. There are a number of different revenue streams that they're trying to cultivate, right? And that doesn't include any revenue they might earn from ads or sponsors or affiliate links. And I would say that at least the people I actually know who are doing this are just as much entrepreneurs as they are artists. And I think that's something that we don't talk about enough. It's one thing to be able to do the work, right? To do the creative work. But without the business side or the social media savvy to get the work out there, right, in front of an audience, you're kind of sunk, right? It's one of the reasons that I have, 70 odd finished paintings in my basement and not on someone else's wall. I'm pretty good at the creative part, but I'm not so good at the marketing and the entrepreneurial business, that part, right? And this is a huge topic, right, that I have wrestled with both solo and in conversation with other people for years. And we're not going to get to a 3-step solution, do A, B, and C tonight. But I think if we can at least start the conversation and I can invite you to be part of that conversation, I think we can move the needle and maybe help some people out. Because there is no, like I said, there is no 3-step solution. There is no map to follow. And I don't believe that you can simply decide to make a living from your art. I don't believe that any more than you can just decide to go take an iconic photo or write a best-selling book or, go make a viral video. You don't get to decide that, right? Because the outcome is dependent on the size of and reception by an audience, right? Which is almost entirely beyond your control. And it's only partly related to whether or not what you're making is any good, right? Remember, popular does not equal good, nor does good deserve to be popular. And those two things are often mutually exclusive despite our tendency to want to conflate them, right? So let's before we take a little break and I invite Richard in, let's break down the question a little bit. What are we really talking about when you say make a living from your art, right? You're talking about money. But I'm going to ask you something. Let me ask you a question, and that is, how far have you actually gone into this thought experiment, right? How much do you need to make a living? And are you talking about making a comfortable living? Are you talking about just eking by? And is it just you? Is it a contribution to maybe a second income? Or do you want to support your whole family yourself? Is there any wiggle room in your plan? Because I got to tell you, there's a difference between making money from your art and making a living from your art. A big difference. So if any of this is resonating with you, if you've got feedback or a question, you want to maybe take the conversation in a completely different direction, or you want to comment on something that Freddy said, 202-539-0209, or you can Skype me at Saddoris. I'm going to play one more song, And if you are a fan, man, if you're a fan of the Beatles or the Beach Boys or, those sort of straight ahead 60s pop tunes or That Thing You Do, the Tom Hanks flick, you're going to love this. This is a tune called Nowhere by Ziv Moran.
Set me free, come on little girl. All you gotta do is set me free. Can't you see? Come on little girl. All you gotta do is set me free, oh yeah. Look up the skies, all the stars above you, all the stars are saying do, set me free, come on little girl. All you gotta do is set me free, oh yeah. Look up the skies, all the stars above you, all the stars are saying do. Set me free, come on little girl. All you gotta do is set me free. All you gotta do is set me free.
Come on. That's a terrific tune. That's Nowhere by Ziv Moran. Again, available on Artlist, links in the show notes. So I got a message from Richard Boutwell, who has called in a couple times, and I'm grateful for each and every time that he does, asking if it would be helpful if he would call in and offer some thoughts. That's pretty close, right, Richard?
Yeah, well, when you said Beach Boys and That Thing You Do, like my heart started racing because I thought that's what we were going to talk about.
We can talk about that because, honest to God, I could watch That Thing You Do, and it's one of those movies that anytime it comes on, I will stop what I'm doing and watch the rest of the movie.
There are like 4 DVDs I've ever ripped, and that's one of them. No,
that's like a glowing endorsement. I have committed a crime for you, Tom Hanks. I've done it.
I bought the soundtrack. Well, I mean, I guess I paid Apple to download the soundtrack. So I don't know if that counts.
Right.
But,
you licensed the soundtrack. Yeah. Such a great flick.
Oh, yeah.
Did you watch? Have you seen the DVD extras of how they really kind of came together as a band and rehearsed for months prior to so they could pull it off?
I have not, but now I'm gonna have to go to Amazon.
You have to see it. It's they got together, they learned to play, and they were playing, gigs.
You know what? That's actually, so maybe that's why I love it. 'Cause like, I don't know if we talked about this before, but I grew up as a musician before I started photographing, and I'm not sure if that's what I connected to with that movie. Is like one, like the kind of what we thought of was idyllic 60s,
right?
But also the just the musicality of it and the vibe you get as a band. It's, I don't know.
Yeah. And I love the relationship. Get us there, Skitch. I mean, come on. Come on. So great. If you haven't seen that movie, listeners, please do yourself a favor and go watch That Thing You Do. It's really terrific.
Well, I'm just glad that no one else making fun of me for watching that, because sometimes around the house I get a look.
Do you really?
Nah, it's Anyway,
I'll go to bat for you.
Yeah, cool. Oh, should we dive into this?
We can dive into it. Sure. I think it's, ultimately, if we can move the needle a little bit or get people thinking about moving their own needle, I think that's a good thing.
Yeah. So, all right. So, the first time I called in, I mentioned I worked for these guys who are people, like husband and wife, but the guy started photographing in the 60s, right?
Right.
And back then, he literally called up museum curators and said, I have some photographs I'd like to show you. And they say, great, come on in. And that's kind of how he started his career, probably late 60s is what I'm thinking.
Mm-hmm.
And then from there, just drove around. He would talk to a curator. They say, oh, this person, you should meet this person in this town. They're a collector. And so you'd go see them, show them photographs, and they would whip out the checkbook, buy a few. He'd drive around someplace else, get home, and send them the prints. And so I hear that story as a 19-year-old, 18, 19-year-old, and say, and this is kind of after I kind of gave up on those musical dreams. And
let's loop around to that in a minute. Let's come back to that.
Yeah, well, not that I gave up, but I gave up. And I said, well, photography, is, I'm not sure where you should weigh those, but
right.
I wanted to be a itinerant artist photographer, right?
Right.
And so I kind of just moved out to the East Coast, and it's cutting the story way short, but started working.
I've got time. Go as deep as you want.
Well, I know we want to talk on a PD later, and I just
okay. Yeah, well, that's true. That's true.
Yeah.
That's true. All right, so you're getting a teaser of a deep dive with Richard Boutwell at a future date.
So yeah, well, so the idea and the reason I wanted to call in was seeing how someone can make a living in, say, the 70s, 80s, and mid 90s, where the market as a fine art photographer was much smaller, and the market for collectors was who's doing this? We want to buy it.
Mm-hmm.
And the museums were not being flooded with people saying, come look at work, where you could actually, he made a decent living, bought some good property, built a great studio, and never had a real job since the 60s, because it was always driving around selling photographs. And now, of course, the other half of that story is the house didn't get finished it's not finished still. So, you had to take this with the other side of it, is that you put a lot on the line.
Right.
And especially if you don't have a fallback. And that is where I think we see a lot of really successful people. No doubt they put the work in and they hustled like hell. In a lot of cases, they might not have had a fallback, but in a lot of, they also, they were in a good position to do what they did.
Right.
And we got great work out of it. I don't want to disparage them at all. We got great work out of it.
Right.
But so the interesting thing as someone who had the idea that that's what I want to do, go into, and see how quickly it changed from, let's say, 2002 to probably 2007 is where, and of course, this is right before the financial collapse too. So that has a lot to do with it.
Did you catch the tail end of that, the ability to do that as you said, an itinerant photographer, or did you come in too late altogether?
No. So when, let's say, a few years, probably I want to say 2004
mm-hmm.
to 2005, I was I had a few meaning less than 5 people who were buying work on not a regular basis, but I would see them once a year, every couple of years, and they'd buy 4 or 5 prints.
So they were patrons, not just one-time customers.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
And where you could call them up and they wanted to support you and they were happy to get the work. And it was more about the relationship, and that's what we'll talk about later. It's more about the relationship than, this is a great picture. Okay, thanks. See you later.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just when 2007 is when the blogs all 2005, 2007 is when, if you didn't have a blog, you weren't doing it right.
Right. Yeah, sure.
When Alex Soth was starting to make the big print. And that's kind of where I see the market changing a bit. And there were certain things that people were looking for. And it got a lot harder to start to meet people. So
in what way did
attitudes
change in terms of how willing people were to meet with unknowns or relative unknowns? What changed when you said they weren't willing to meet people?
So around that time, do you know Mary Virginia Swanson?
No.
She ran a super successful fine art stock photography agency and really represented some great people and got a lot of work out there in licensing deals. And it was called Swanstock. Yeah,
okay.
It was Swanstock. And this is probably in the 90s and to the early 2000s.
So this is well before any of the Gettys and the Corbis and all that kind of thing. Well before.
Yeah, it's when you could actually be a photographer and make artwork and then have that be licensed.
Okay.
And it pay part of your bills. But around kind of when I started trying to break out, stop doing so much darkroom work, shaking the fixer tray. And actually try to have my own kind of separate career,
right,
is when the Houston Photo Fest was always a big deal, and even going, I'm not sure exactly when it started, but 80s, 90s, early 2000s, it was always a big deal, but you could get into it.
Mm-hmm.
And she started doing, and I'm not going to blame her because like I said, she got a lot of stuff out there, but it was the beginning of that kind of portfolio review, that circuit.
Yeah.
And she held seminars and really wanted artists to make careers out of their art, and gave seminars on how to do it. And so much of it is market and develop your relationships. And so that kind of, self-selects in a certain way, where if you're you kind of saying, you have 70 paintings or 50 paintings on the wall and not in a gallery, I've got boxes and boxes of photographs,
right.
in the attic and not, but anyway, it really, what I started to see is that the market and not the market, I keep saying that, but, the competition, the people coming out of MFA programs or coming out of undergrad programs. And now you have to get your MFA, and now you have to do portfolio reviews, and now you have to get an adjunct teaching spot because now you have student loans.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of saw all that happening, and I was just took a step back and kind of been trying to be in and out of it a little bit. But it's just, I don't know, interesting to see how that's changed over, 15 years. And now where there's a different kind of photographer doing really well. And it's not through the traditional, what we see as blue chip galleries, or not Howard Greenberg or people in New York. Right.
Right. Gagosian, things like that.
Exactly. Yeah. You can't start there. Right. You have to, and where maybe, let's say 30, 40 years ago, they would look and would pick it up. And, because now they can't, right? There's just too many people and too much good work. And how are you going to talk and see to everybody and still talk to your clients and sell prints? It's just kind of a crazy world in terms of how you do it now. And I don't know if that's interesting at all, but
no, it's very interesting because I think there are a number of people who are still trying to kind of model their creative career on those who came before them. But you couldn't follow, to your point about Alex Soth, you couldn't follow Alex's recipe, even if you followed it to the T and were every bit as good as him and arrive at the same place. You couldn't do it.
Right.
There is
and
no
there's other reasons
roadmap
for that too, but
say again.
I said there's other reasons for that too. We won't get into that now.
Yeah.
But but no, it you can't, it's just not possible. And also why would you want to is the other thing. It's you're trying to be the whole point of this is is making something about you.
Right.
How are you going to do that if you're trying to like be somebody else?
Right.
And so I just like, personally, I've tried to make a little cash, other places just to kind of keep it going. But also kind of keep the slow burn of like what I'm like making the work, because that's, ultimately that's what's important.
Right. And ultimately that's
in the back
what
of
you
your
have
head,
the most control over.
And that's what people end up actually buying anyway. It's, or that's what sticks, you might be hot for a minute. But when you're 80 years old, like, you know what, you guys turned me on to that art market movie. What was that on?
The Price of Everything.
Yes.
Terrific. Right.
Yeah. I'm so bad with names. Who's the guy who was living in the barn, just making work?
Larry Poons. Larry Poons.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He
Once
thought,
the darling of the art world, and then fell out of favor and couldn't sell a painting to save his life. And then 25 years later, somebody went, "Oh, wow, you're really good." And he was back on top.
Yeah.
Like, so fickle.
Yeah. And how much does, I pay less attention to painting just because of attention span. But how much of, like, taking aside his creative ability or his, just like his artwork as artwork, forget like market stuff. I think they even mentioned this in the movie, like they saw it as undervalued because, now he's popular because he's undervalued.
Right.
And like, at this point, like he doesn't, like you see him, he doesn't care. Like he's making it work. But anyway.
Well, I think that was one of the, I mean, not to go off on a tangent, but let's go off on a tangent. I think that was one of the things about pretty much every one of the artists that they profiled in that movie was they were just making the work. Like there was a realization that I can't control anything outside of the walls of my studio. So this is where I'm going to do my thing. And because I have to, right? Because I have to do this.
And, all that said about like developing your audience or your, not I was going to say client list, but like, your quote unquote connections. I think what people ultimately respond to is like you doing the work. And so just like for anybody who's, I know we're supposed to be just you and me, but anybody listening, like I've gone through like plenty of money on therapists trying to figure out like why the hell I'm not doing it. Like, but I'm still doing it. So it can't be about the money, but you still got to make some cash. Like that's the reality of it. And
but why put the pressure on yourself to say, I need to make all the cash from this? Like, why start there? That's the part that I don't understand is, let's start at CEO. Well, you could, I mean, I guess, but you're probably not going to.
Yeah. And how much of like social media projection is all that, and like how much does that influence like how people think they're supposed to be, rather than just like being themselves? It's like I think at least I've been through that. Yeah. I think you have to some degree.
Hey, if you're listening and you want to chime in to something that Richard and I are talking about, feel free, 202-539-0209. Or you can Skype me at Saddoris. Anyway, yes.
Yeah, well, anyway, so
where do you see it going? Are you on, I mean, if you feel comfortable talking about it, are you on the upswing where you feel confident that this will lead somewhere, or have you resigned yourself that I can't worry about that, I just need to keep making the work, or is it some hybrid in between?
Yeah, so you have to kind of take or have some kind of awareness of how you deal with, let's say, rejection. And not even rejection, just like I don't want to say how much work you want to put into it, because it's like having some kind of awareness of like how much work you want to put into the work, and how much you want to put into the work of promoting yourself.
Yeah.
Because there has to be like a certain amount of both if you want to quote unquote make it.
Yeah, sure, sure.
And make it just, I mean, like gallery shows are having a book, which, you know, I've seen like the book publishing part too, and you're paying for your own books. You might as well self-publish. It's for the most part. I mean,
yeah, I agree with that. And I have both my own sort of use case and friends who have gone through different methods of doing it. And you're making a few bucks a book. I mean, that's the end of the day, right? You're not doing it.
Or you have a garage full.
Yeah. That's the other thing. Yeah, sure.
But no, so I was going to say like, kind of you have to have I've like been on the bad side of this, like an understanding of how much you actually need to live. And you're going to have to get like, you know, not that I want to resign or like discourage people, but like you should have a backup, right. Just in terms of making money, because if you can't live, like you can't make it work. And like it's like I keep saying, it's all about the work.
Right.
So,
I mean,
that's
I was going to break it down a little
to.
bit. You know, I was going to go at it and say, look, let's say for the sake of argument, you want to make $100,000 a year from your work, which sounds like a lot, but you take 30% off for taxes and now you're down to 70-ish. You know, that's not a ton. I mean, it's a good living, but it's not a ton. So how do you do it? I mean, are you going to sell prints? If you're just starting out, what are you going to get for a print? $100 for a print, maybe? So now, you've got to sell 80 plus prints a month to make that nut every month.
That's so. Yeah, like I don't know how. I don't know how someone's going to do that. Like that's a lot of prints.
It's a lot of prints. As
someone who's trying to, who's like seeing how. So basically, you can't sell prints for $100, and that's kind of the problem of where I started seeing a problem maybe 5-10 years ago when really good digital cameras were starting to pop up. And I'm speaking from like a landscape photography.
Yeah, sure.
But where, you could sell an 8x10 contact print for $400, like with nobody knowing your name. And you sell, a few of those a month, like you're not doing half bad as like someone in their 20s,
mm-hmm.
Talking 20 years ago. You can't sell an 8x10 as like a nobody for $400 right now.
No. No.
And that's not that it's not worth that. It's probably maybe worth $500 to $800, but the market just isn't there for it, which is like the kind of the real sad part.
So given that, let me ask you something. Given that, have your expectations on yourself personally, on your work, on your ability to make money from your art, have they changed in the face of all of this? Have they changed as a result of the changing market and more people trying to do it? And, not only are your feet moving, but the target's moving too. Do you still have that same sort of optimism that, yes, I'm going to do this, I can do this, I want to do this? Or how has that affected you?
Well, yes, and it's a matter of time scale, though.
Yeah.
I don't doubt that. Well, I don't say I don't doubt, but it's the kind of thing is you can't doubt. Otherwise, what are we doing? But I kind of in let's say 2012 said, okay, I see how this is going. I could go two different ways. One is throw it all in, and that's I'm living back in a dirt garage in a tent. Or I could have I could do a few other things that are not immediately directly related to making work, but still bring in some cash, right. And still take a breather every once you take a breather, but of course the breather is always somehow incorporating photographing or whatever.
Right.
But I kind of went the second route. I don't know how much I put on the Instagrams, but I started selling software. I taught myself development and went the kind of Levi Strauss route where selling tools to photographers rather than trying to sell prints. And like, I still sell some prints, but that's not where the bulk of it comes from.
Right.
It's selling software but like helping other people make prints.
Right. Right.
Like,
is that still as satisfying, but in a different way? How do you quantify that?
In terms of like satisfaction?
Yeah.
Or cash?
Satisfaction.
So this is like, and this is probably like goes down to personality as well. But in terms from my like, I only started programming a couple years ago. But there is a similar kind of, oh my God, this is amazing, that you get, or someone can get with like seeing a print come up.
Really?
Where it's like, holy shit, I did something and it worked. And like
really?
It's ones and zeros. But there's like a lot of like kind of, and maybe because I make abstract work as well.
Right.
But like some kind of abstract thinking that goes in where like I have, I don't know what it's going to do. Not necessarily want to say that. I don't have some kind of clear idea how it's going to happen. I know what I want it to be, and I'm going to try all these different things. And when it works, like it's like the endorphin rush, and that kind of, it's the similar kind of feeling. So I've just kind of let that take the place of the the walking through canyons of Death Valley feeling. Right.
Well, and they can still be a part of it, right? I mean, I think that that any sort of contemporary artist, creative maker, I think one of the first things that you have to let go of is that there's going to be one revenue stream and only one revenue stream.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like I've been doing, like teaching, like online teaching for the last, I don't know, 5 years or so. It's just like, what can I do? But like, if let's say last year started to pick up where like, not raking it in, but like getting by, like, let's just say like the goal is this is looking at like, I'm glad my wife's asleep, but the goal is to get by because because it's like college fund. Yeah. We'll worry about that later.
Yeah.
But the goal is to get by because there is like a higher goal, and where can I put the time to like achieve the higher goal where can like we need to like deal with this year kind of thing happen too. So like you asked, like, do I see it happening? Like, it depends, what I see happening is like figuring out what kind of work I'm supposed to make and actually make it. If it sells for $20,000 a print at some point, like that's cool, but that's not the goal. The goal is to make it. Like the goal is to like figure it out, like figure out what the hell I'm feeling, put it on a piece of paper, and have that represent something much bigger than me or anything else that I could like put my finger on.
Yeah. Well, and it sounds like you're giving yourself the space for that to be a part of the process, but there's this realization that it doesn't have to be the entirety of the process. That doesn't have to be your entire creative output. It can be a part of it, and it still has value.
Yep.
Yeah.
And it's taken a few years to get to that point. But hopefully, I don't know.
How do you think you're doing?
That's like the funny thing. Like, I don't think about it in terms of like where I am now compared, like, where I am along the path. It's just like, I couldn't say.
Is there even a path for you anymore, or is there just the work at this point?
I mean, when I say it's just the work, like we've got, I think, like we've got like a small toddler, like that's also the work. And so, I'm just
the creative work.
It's like kind of,
not the work.
Oh, the creative work part, like when you're 20, you're in your 20s, like you know what you were going to make and you're how to do it. And then you learn that you don't know the damn thing. Right. And so I'm kind of at the point where like, I'm just like, I'm going to follow these things and see where they go. And that actually like kind of ties into something else I did want to bring up. It's like, sometimes you're not ready to put it out there. And I think you may have said this before, but like, the work's like, you have to get to a point where you understand when the work's finished. And I've like, put stuff out there too early thinking it was a project, and like kind of have to backpedal a little bit. It's like, I think maybe these other things go together differently than I thought they did when I was making them. Mm-hmm. And so not having that, like, got to push new stuff out so I can get it in, this year's portfolio, or wrap up this
post
project
it to social media or whatever. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, like, and I think that's kind of where I've been for the last year or two, is not being so quick to want to get it out there. Like, let it like sit and figure out where all these like small influences come in to like make something cooler, newer.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's definitely a part of the sort of introspection and sort of self-reflection that you have to go through. I mean, I've told the story when I was in college, and I decided that I just didn't have the skills to get where I wanted to be. I wasn't going to hang in MoMA. I wasn't going to hang in LACMA. I wasn't going to hang anywhere. So I decided this. I didn't ever try to do those things. I just decided it sort of arbitrarily and quit painting for 20 years.
That's how I stopped playing music.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. But, like, it's always there. Mm-hmm. Like, that's the other thing, is like, that's, you just have to make sure that singing you doesn't go away. Like, the time period between you doing the things is one thing, but like, making sure that's still in you is like the bigger part.
Right.
I don't know how that's like, relates to trying to make a living as an artist, but like, that's just trying to live as an artist.
Well, I think that's the bigger picture, right? Because the living, yeah, that's an interesting distinction. Make a living as an artist versus living as an artist. I'm going to have to think about that. I think that's something that we could dive into, if not you and I, and you're certainly welcome to, but whoever wants to call in, I think that's another episode altogether.
Yeah, you know what? Like I said in my message, I don't want to monopolize. So.
No. This is please. I mean, this is great stuff, and I love the idea that people want to call in and we continue these conversations. If not sequentially, then maybe skip an episode or two and then come back. I love that idea of making this a community of sort of recurring characters.
Well. And the other thing I appreciate is like that it's more, I think like Andre like brought up a few weeks ago, like we're like, people are bringing up realer things, like.
I hope so.
And like, I don't know, I super appreciate like the space for that.
Well, it's what I'm interested in. And I've tried to be as honest as I possibly can and as transparent in the stuff that I'm going through. And I'm hoping that invites and inspires people to do the same, because I think there's strength in us talking about these things. There's strength in creating this sort of safe space that we can have these discussions and maybe work through them. But even if we don't work through them, we're working them, and that has value.
Yep.
So, yeah. Good stuff.
All right. I'm going to let you go.
All right.
Thanks for letting me
We'll talk next week.
Sure thing. Later.
Right, talk to you later. Oh, that was terrific. Thank you, Richard, for calling in. Let's play one more tune and then we'll wrap up. We're at about an hour 10. Let's play "Full of Bricks" by Addie Levi.
I'm free from living lies, free from my own deception, headed the right direction. I walk through the fields of mud. I thought I'd find a shelter in you, our perfect sky. Doors open, doors closed.
scared to be alone. Stuck at the same place that we've been, but I cannot get out. Doors open, doors close, and my heart again. Wonder how long it'll take till I go the pain. Your walls between us keep me far away. There's no way back. There's no way back. There's no way back. Your heart is full of breaks.
Full of bricks, Addie Levi. This is a big topic, and I know that it can sometimes sound a little bleak when we're talking about the market and the competition and trying to figure out strategies that work. But it's really not meant to be bleak at all. There are ways to do it. I think, as Adrian has said to me, you owe it to yourself to be honest with yourself. And I think, as with many things she says, it's terrific advice. And I think a lot of people enter into, I want to do this, or I want to make a living with this, often with no other plan than because I want to and because I've got some sort of skill at it. And I don't know that that's enough anymore. I don't know that desire and skill are enough. They could be, but as Richard said, there's got to be a plan B. And maybe that plan B is just to ease into plan A. Maybe that's the thing. If you're working at your 9 to 5, can you pursue that thing you love, that thing that lights you up, that thing that gives those 8 hours that you're not doing them, that gives you a hunger to do it? Can you ease into it? Can you do those things at night, on the weekends, in spare time? Can you not saddle yourself with so much pressure to be a raging success right out of the gate? It's something I'd love to continue to talk about. It's something that I would encourage you to think about. And anytime you want to talk about it, you can email me if you don't want to talk about it on the show. Email me at talkback@jeffreysaddoris.com. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram @JeffreySaddoris if you'd rather do it that way. But if you'd like to chime in, we'll be here next Wednesday, hopefully. Next week may be a weird show, but I'll try and be here for it. In the meantime, thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. Thank you for the chat. Thank you, Richard and Freddie, for calling in. This is heavy stuff, and I hope we can continue working through it. And as a reminder, all of the music, which I think there were some good songs here tonight, all the music is available on Artlist.io. Link will be in the show notes on YouTube, and I will put this in the Everything feed as well. I still haven't decided, should I just dump them all in there at once, or should I do it over a couple days? We'll figure that out. I'm sure Adrian's got some ideas on that. So until next week, please get out and vote. Be good to each other. Be good to yourselves. And I will see you, or talk to you at least, next week. Thanks for being here.